This is Sapna Bhartiya and welcome to TFiR Insights. And today we have with us once again Tobi Knaup, CEO of D2iQ. And today we are going to talk about D2iQ's Kaptain with a K. Tobi, first of all, it's great to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about Kaptain. Just for our audience, quickly just remind them, what is Kaptain all about?
Yeah, Kaptain is our latest product in our Kubernetes product line, or DKP, or D2iQ Kubernetes platform. And what it is it's an end-to-end production-grade machine learning platform that is based on the leading open source components in the space. So it runs on top of Kubernetes. It's based on Kubeflow. It uses Jupyter Notebooks, TensorFlow, and many other pieces that data scientists use these days to build modern deep learning or AI applications. We have this, we observed that folks that are building these modern applications, these modern ML applications, they tend to base them on these cutting edge open source pieces that I just mentioned. And the reason is that gives them the best agility. These projects move so fast, they innovate so fast. That's why people are banking on them. And so what we did with Kaptain is we took a similar approach to what we did with Convoy, our Kubernetes distribution, which is we went to the community, we picked the best of breed open source pieces, and then put it all into an end-to-end integrated and fully supported enterprise offering. And that's what Kaptain is.
So let's talk about why are you targeting data scientists with this Kaptain?
Yeah, that's right. So and it fits actually really well with what we did in the past and what we're focused on, and was really driven by customer demand. So one of the things that we've been doing in all of our 8 years as a company, and even before that, as you mentioned in the Berkeley days where Mesos came from, is we've always been focused on data-driven applications, right? It used to be called big data at one point, and then it became fast data, and now we're talking about ML and AI. So since the beginning of our company, we've helped customers not just to run their microservice applications and containers, but also run stateful data services. And what we've done a lot over the years was we particularly help people build fast data applications. Fast data meaning data comes into the system in real time, and it's being processed in real time, and decisions are being made on it in real time. And folks typically used Kafka as the data pipeline there, Spark for data analytics, and Cassandra as the database to store that data for long term. We've helped companies like Royal Caribbean and many others do that. And so what they were doing is essentially they were building these data-driven or intelligent cloud-native apps, right, that have data at their core. What Royal Caribbean is doing, for example, is they're ingesting data from the apps that they build for passengers, and then they make personalized recommendations based on that. But there's many more examples like connected cars and things like that. And so what we've observed over the years is step one that these companies go through is they start collecting that data, right? They set up these data services to even be able to ingest and process that data. And then in their first generation of these apps, they might run some jobs on the data to get insights into it, to make decisions, but pretty basic stuff. What we're seeing happen now is that we're seeing a new generation of cloud-native applications being built. And I like to call them intelligent cloud-native applications because they have intelligence driven by machine learning and AI at their core. So these companies that have been collecting vast amounts of data are really seeing that data as a competitive differentiator, as intellectual property. And what they want to do now is they want to use the latest generation of machine learning tools like TensorFlow, like Jupyter, PyTorch, many others, to get deeper insights into that data and to make their applications more intelligent, because they really see that data and those insights as a competitive advantage. And so really, Kaptain started with our customers going to us and saying, "Hey, D2iQ, you helped us collect and analyze all that data. Can you also help us take advantage of this latest generation of deep learning and ML tools and run that on the same platform?" And that's really key here because, as I said, the machine learning piece here is really part of a logical business application that these companies are building. It's part of the same thing. And so that's why they also want to run it on the same cloud native substrate on Kubernetes.
Will it be wrong to say that the Kaptain is more or less like a AI/ML platform? Number one. Number two is when you mentioned that next generation of application or intelligent applications. Now, when we look at, there are two things. One is that AI/ML workload themselves are running as workloads, and second is that is kind of powering application. As you said, the intelligence is helping those applications. So can you talk about the kind of difference? Because if you look at in today's world, there is no value in running just an application which is not leveraging any AI/ML, no matter where you look at it. So let's talk about the importance of data-driven world that we are living in, and then when we look at Kaptain as a platform, how it's helping not only AI/ML as a workload, but also applications who are being powered by AI/ML. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. So, one thing that we're observing too that is really interesting is that for most organizations out there, the data that they're processing, that they need to process as part of these intelligent apps, the vast majority of that data is now being produced outside of their corporate network, right? Outside of their data center or outside of their cloud deployments. It really is being produced on the edge. And that's driven by technologies like 5G, for example, right? Gives us much more bandwidth and lower latency. So that means more data will be produced at the edge. It's also driven by applications like industrial Internet of Things, right? We're working with one organization that has about 150 different manufacturing sites, and they are in the process of deploying about 80,000 sensors across these locations that all produce data in real time that they want to process, and run through machine learning models to do things like predictive maintenance, to optimize output, and things like that. And so that is a great example of, a manufacturing company, right, taking advantage of real-time data and taking advantage of ML and AI to really optimize what they're doing, right, to optimize their manufacturing processes. I think there was an article written by Mark Andreessen a couple of years ago that said, software is eating the world. I think AI is eating the world now, right? We're seeing it pop up in literally every single vertical around the world. And so I think that's a great example. Data really, or other folks have said, data is the new oil. It really is a competitive differentiator for folks, and they need these machine learning technologies to take full advantage of the data that they have. And now, what's interesting here too is another shift that we're seeing or have seen over the years is the way people are using machine learning models is really changing, right? As it's becoming part of these applications, the machine learning models are turning from an offline process or offline task in the past, right, where folks would run a model, it would spit out some data, and maybe that gets turned into a report that the CEO looks at and then makes a business decision based on it. So it's an offline process. But because it's becoming part of these applications, these are now online models, right? They need to run 24/7 with high availability. They need to be monitored, just like we need to monitor other production applications, right? And that's where Kaptain also plays, right? It's interesting, if you look at some data, about 95% of the time that people spend on production machine learning applications is actually not spent on building those models. That time is spent on cleaning the data, setting up monitoring, setting up deployment processes for the models and things like that. And so we looked at that and said, well, wait a minute, we solved all of these problems for business applications, for microservices many years ago, right? We have CI/CD, we have observability stacks, all of that. And so a big part of what Kaptain does and where the value lies is really shortening that time from when a model is built by a data scientist to when it runs in production, because that's where a lot of the time gets wasted usually. On average, people spend more than 90 days from the point where a model is built to when it's actually running in production. And that's why most machine learning projects also fail. And so that's where we focus, right, is using our expertise as D2iQ, our day two focus on shortening that time, automating it, making it as easy as possible.
All right. One more thing is that as once you have the prototype and you really want to take it to scale, if you look at data, it's not only the new data that companies are generating and collecting, not only the edge computing, all those devices, but they also have data from like 10 or 20, 30 years ago. So when you look at that amount of data, You said most of those project fields. So how does Kaptain really help with not only ingesting new data that will be coming in, but also leveraging the data that already exists and sits in your data lake or wherever you're putting it there?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because in most organizations, what you see is really a very huge variety of data sources that people need to pull together, right? You might have a SQL database that's been sitting there for decades, right? It has a lot of historical data in a structured way in that SQL database. Then people are also using unstructured data, right? That might be log files from the applications and things like that. And then, most recently, they're seeing streaming data, right? So that's that real-time data, fast data component, data coming in from Kafka. So where we help with that is that, not only do we help people run stateless applications, but a part of our offering is also, automating the lifecycle of some of these stateful data services like Kafka, like Cassandra, right? And so a data scientist can, from their notebook, right, from their Jupyter Notebook, which gets deployed as part of Kaptain, they can very easily connect to all of these different data sources and pull the data in. Typically you see another persona involved in these organizations. That is a data engineer. So data engineer's responsibility is to provide the right data to the data scientist, right? Pull it from all of these various data sources, potentially clean it up, reformat it. Also make sure that data privacy guidelines are being followed. So we have components in Kaptain too, namely Spark, one of the popular choices for data engineering, right? So Kaptain makes it really easy to also deploy Spark and other tools to assist with that data engineering process.
When we do talk about leveraging AI ML, not only that, from project prototype to production is challenging, but also when do you start actually seeing a return on that investment? Because you are still talking about models, that it takes time. So what kind of problem or challenge? It could be mindset problem, it could be people's problem, it could be technology that you've seen where you do think that Kaptain might solve that as well. Is that a real problem or not? That
Yeah.
ROI from ML is.
Yeah, it's generally I would say, and this is what we hear from customers, right? The ROI from machine learning project is poor in general. Before platforms like Kaptain came around. In fact, there's data that says over 80% of ML projects fail. They never make it to production. And it's not because people don't have the right data scientists or the right data. It is really about operational aspects, right? It's about productionizing the model, setting up a production grade platform. That's where those 80+% of projects fail. And so we're really attacking that problem with Kaptain. And Kaptain starts to deliver value very quickly, like right away, essentially, right? Because the first thing companies need to do is they need to get access to the data, right, and clean it up. The data engineering piece we just talked about. So Spark is part of Kaptain, makes that really easy. The next thing that happens is a data scientist starts developing a model. Kaptain delivers notebooks as a service, so they get a Jupyter Notebook environment where they can be productive right away. And by the way, one of the great pieces of Kaptain too is, we really believe that a data scientist should never have to leave their notebook environment, right? All of this stuff is running on top of Kubernetes, but as a data scientist, that should be abstracted away from you, right? You shouldn't have to know the ins and outs of Kubernetes in order to build a model and deploy a model successfully. And so what we did is we built a Python SDK, the Kaptain SDK, that allows a data scientist to interact with all the platform pieces, like running training, hyperparameter tuning, deploying the model, monitoring the model, all of that. You can perform all of these actions from never leaving your notebook and by just using that Python SDK. So all of the infrastructure complexity is abstracted away. And so that's why Kaptain delivers value right away.
Since you already mentioned a couple of open source projects, can you talk about what are the core components of Kaptain as a platform?
Yeah, so the core components of Kaptain are, so first of all, it is a opinionated subset of Kubeflow. So Kubeflow, a very popular collection of open source tools for running machine learning on top of Kubernetes. So there's Jupyter Notebooks, there's TensorFlow, there's PyTorch, there's Scikit, those very popular data science or ML libraries. So all of that's built in. And then Kubeflow also provides pipelines, right? So those production CI/CD pipelines from getting the model from development into production, that's built in. We have a tool for hyperparameter optimization or model tuning, right? Finding the right parameters. That's called KATIP. And then what we did is we added some additional components that Kubeflow does not provide, right? So Spark is in there, as I mentioned, for data engineering. Horovat is in there, and a few other bits and pieces. And then most importantly, that Kaptain SDK, right? That Python SDK that makes it very easy to interact with all the different platform pieces for a data scientist from just within their notebook.
The beauty of open source is that you can pull all those software stack, download it, install it. But what about day two? And that's what D2iQ come into the picture, because getting started with open source is easy, but the second step is challenging, and then maintaining it, integrating it. Plus, we already have a huge gap in supply and demand of not only data scientists but also developers. So how does Kaptain allow developers to leverage these open source technologies, but you make it easy for them so that they can still focus on adding business value to their applications without having to worry about integrating these components? So it's a twofold question. Number one is, how do you integrate all these pieces together? And then how does it affect a developer's workflow?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we always talk about wanting to make enterprise grade open source easy, because open source is fantastic. The speed of innovation, the ecosystem, it's awesome. But when you put it into an enterprise environment, right, there's just a lot of work to do to get it ready for day two. How do you secure the platform? How do you upgrade it and things like that? And so we've done a lot of that work in Kaptain. It ties into our other DKP platform pieces like Commander. So it ties into the security and the RBAC system there. Because obviously, data security and data access is a big concern here for folks. They're often working with sensitive data, but potentially customer data, or we also work with organizations in the healthcare industry, so they need to be HIPAA compliant. So we put a lot of those controls in there so people can really run a secure platform, and then we make the management of it, the full lifecycle automation, full lifecycle management. We make that as easy as possible. We automate a lot of the pieces. And, every time you have sort of a collection of, loosely coupled open source pieces, what becomes very challenging is, well, how do you upgrade the whole thing in a non-disruptive way, right? Because all of these open source pieces, they have their own release cycle, right? They don't always test with each other, making sure that the new versions are still compatible. So we've built up a lot of expertise there over the years. We've done that same thing for Convoy, right? Our Kubernetes distribution, which is Kubernetes plus over a dozen other pieces that also all need to work together. So we have very sophisticated, test and release infrastructure internally. We run very extensive large-scale tests to make sure it all works together. And we're doing the same thing for Kaptain, right? So bringing all these open source pieces together, integrating them, testing them, so that our customers, when they get a new version of Kaptain, they know it upgrades seamlessly and in a non-disruptive way.
Right. So that's a good segue to the next question. That is more about the product. It became GA just a few weeks ago. What roadmap do you have? What kind of pipeline it looks like? That, of course, there are a lot of things that you cannot talk or don't want to talk about at this point, but still, let's talk about, what should we expect? What does the roadmap look like for Kaptain?
There's a couple of things we focus on, and what we do is, we like to partner very closely with our customers, especially the first set of customers when we put out a new product, to really listen closely to their requirements and use that to inform our roadmap. So what was great about Kaptain is, even before it went GA, we already had a number of customers, paying customers on the platform, because they just couldn't wait to get their hands on it. So we have a really good set of data points there from what folks need, and where we're taking Kaptain is, we're going to put a lot of effort into making monitoring really easy. So integrating it with the platform monitoring pieces that Commander provides. So it's really easy to get data on how the different pieces of the platform are doing. How many models am I training right now, for example. Integrating it with our cost management, right? So machine learning model training can be really costly, right? People are running GPU machines that are really expensive. And so cost management, one of our platform features, is really critical for Kaptain as well. So we're working on that. Another thing we're doing is working on experiment tracking. So, as you run different iterations of your model, how are those performing over time? And then lastly, just a deeper integration with Commander, supporting deeper multi-tenancy integration, for example. So those are the big pieces that we're going to be working on.
Tobi, thank you so much for taking time out today and talk about not only Kaptain, but in general, how AI ML, is kind of, you are absolutely right that I don't know if data is the new oil or the new soil where new businesses are growing, but AI ML is going to be at the core of modern business. I cannot even think of anything, even in my, whether it's commercial life or the personal life that I live, it doesn't touch any data or is not, kind of enhanced by data. So thanks for sharing those insights, and I look forward to talk to you again. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure.